like today, I know that the things that I resist the most, it's like this alert goes off. When I resist it, I'm like, wow, I wonder what's on the other side of this door. And every time I've done that in my career, like Facebook, I remember hearing about Facebook the first time. I'm like, that's stupid. And I remember it was like, okay, what's on the other side of that door? When we don't understand something, we just immediately associate, I don't like it.
Yeah. Way more time in judgment than in action. Way more time in judgment than in being inquisitive and curious.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of starting out, just talk about like where you started versus where you're at today and just a little bit of your story.
Yeah. So look, I started out where most everybody starts out, with nothing. Like, even privileged kids. I mean, really, just because you grow up with money doesn't, I didn't grow up with money, but even if a kid grows up with money, you still don't have the confidence. You still don't have the know-how. You still don't have the connections. I grew up with none of that. I didn't have connections. My dad died when I was 10. My mom she didn't know anything about business. She was just a mother and a housewife, This is back in the 50s. Not that that's not valuable, because it really is. But she was raising 5 kids, had her hands full, as you can imagine. We had no money, no income. She had a little bit of money in a savings account that my dad had left from his death, and a house paid for. So I grew up in mostly an environment of fear.
Yeah.
Because the future was uncertain all the time. I feel like I still experience that today, actually. But
there's almost like generational healing that has to take place around that, because like my great grandfather left Italy because he couldn't put food on the table. People say that today, but it's pretty easy to put food on the table, especially if you're in America. But he left. He didn't see his wife for 7 years and met his daughter, and she just turned 7 years old for the first time. Wow. And so that like penetrates generations, right? Like when I was wanting to be an entrepreneur and I'm graduating college, like my grandpa, my mom, they're like, oh, you got to get a job. You got to, and I'm getting offered jobs with organizations that don't even exist anymore, like Anderson or Merrill Lynch, right? And that's felt like security to them, but it's probably one of the riskiest things that can happen. And it's just because of those scars. It's because of that pain.
Yeah. That upbringing of scarcity and struggle, and some of that can be a benefit, and some of it, a guy told me once, he's like, look, all your assets can and probably will become liabilities at some point. So right. Even those things I can see how they benefited me from a work ethic standpoint, particularly in my early 30s. It also became a disability in my 40s and even in my 50s, where I just wasn't thinking about expansion. I was operating under the same conditions. I was doing this interview with this guy. I said, dude, you're asking the same question I was asking myself when I was 25. If you have to change the questions you ask yourself, otherwise you'll find yourself in your 50s doing what you didn't want to do in your 20s.
Right. How many people are just so-called busy, or work ethic and bad philosophy still equals bankruptcy, right? Like,
no, totally. Just because you work hard, I mean, I agree with that completely. Just because somebody works hard, or hustles, or grinds, or all the popular things today, if you don't change your operating basis as time goes on, you'll find yourself in your 50s experiencing this, even with more knowledge and information, experiencing the same problems you had in your 20s.
With more fatigue at that time too, right?
Because as you get older, the losses start accumulating.
Right.
The benefit of being young is like, you don't have the losses yet. And right. That brings a level of naivety and like being a bit naive in situations can benefit you.
So what were those upgrades to your operating system, and what were those questions you asked yourself?
Yeah. So, well, in the beginning, like when I was 25, I had to learn how to sell stuff. I didn't want to sell stuff. I'd gone to college. I didn't want to be a salesman. You don't go spend 4 or 5 years in college to become a commissioned salesperson. And when I got out of college, I couldn't get a job. And my uncle said, look, I can get you a job as a salesman. And I'm like, dude, like, I didn't go to college to be a salesman. He's like, you didn't go to college to be unemployed either.
Right.
So the first upgrade for me was really a downgrade. You know, I had to downgrade. A lot of times in my career, I've actually had to downgrade. And what I mean by that is I had a college degree. I thought I was going to have a career right out the chute, and somebody was going to give me a salary. Probably one of the best things that ever happened to me was not getting that.
Right. It's like, how do you go about checking your ego in those moments? Because how many people are like, still don't take that step, still don't do something because they're above it or because whatever.
And that's exactly what I thought. I thought I was above the, you know, I'm better than that. And then he really smashed me in the face with, hey, you didn't go to college to be unemployed. I was like, yeah, that's true. So he got me a job as a salesperson. Then I had to go through 2 years of humiliation because I hated it so much. And I hated it because I didn't know what I was doing. And so one day I'm like, okay, I can't get another job. The economy was terrible where I was at. 1 out of 4 people were unemployed. That's when they really counted the numbers that they didn't have seasonally adjusted unemployment. Yep. And so I realized I couldn't get a job. I killed all my options. I can't go get another job. Nobody else is going to hire me. I'm not the smartest person. I hate this job, and this is the only place I can get work. And then I made a commitment. I'm going to learn how to be good at this.
Right.
And I did. I started studying sales for the first time in my life. I'd been out of college for 2 years, and I started studying and reading and learning. And next thing you know, I'm good at sales.
Right.
And what's crazy about that is that the thing that I hated, once I committed to it, it became the doorway, literally the gateway to the rest of my life. It would become my first business, my second business. It's what I'm known for today. I've written 8 business books. I mean, it opened the door to everything, to my real estate career. So the thing that
I hear 2 distinctions there. I hear 2 distinctions. So one is like, that's a perfect example of investing in yourself, right? People talk about investing in yourself. You're giving an example. That wasn't glamorous at that moment. It was just an investing in yourself. And the second thing is, I think a lot of people say they're committed to stuff when they're just interested. Like, they're interested in things, but they're not committed. Like, you can't be 80% committed, right? Like, imagine if I call my wife and I'm like, hey, babe, I know you're in Toronto right now and I'm in Salt Lake, but I want to let you know I'm 80% committed to this relationship. You're going to slap my ass through the phone, right? Like, you're either 100% committed or you're not at all. And it felt like that was your moment of commitment and that you really invested in yourself.
Yeah. And I'll tell you how committed I was. Okay. I borrowed $3,000 from my mother for a sales program. Now this is like, first of all, I hate sales. I don't have any money. I borrowed $3,000 to become great at something. Like not to become great, just to get some kind of knowledge.
Right.
I quit making excuses. Oh, the company needs to pay for it. They're responsible. I quit saying, okay, it's about the career. I literally had to lean into something I hated and had to borrow money. Okay. Like, I'm 20 at the time. I was 25 years old. I'm a grown man. And I got to go to my mom and say, can you lend me $3,000? And so I just want to say this, because I think a lot of people do what you say is they commit, but they don't follow it up with time and money. And for me, there's never a commitment if I'm not adding time and money. The most valuable things a person has, time and money. And if I'm adding that, then I'm committed.
I only pay attention to that what I pay for, right? Like,
totally.
There's a different level, and there's skin in the game, right?
My body follows my money.
Yeah.
So, I tend to pay attention to where I put money, and I think other people do too.
Yeah, and I think that the thing I hear that's a thread that everyone's got to understand is responsibility. There is no freedom, there is no progress without responsibility, and there's a humility that was required for that responsibility. Because it's like no progress begins without an admission without honesty. And you're taking an honest assessment saying, okay, I'm a college graduate. And now you're sharing, like, how many people would be scared? Like, dude, I've gone and borrowed money from my family before. It sucks.
Yeah. It's humiliating.
Yeah.
And then I was, I was doing a job that, like, I was selling cars. There is no such thing as, hey,
that's not prestigious. You're not bragging. Yeah.
No. And what's crazy is this past year, I did an event. 35,000 people came to an event in Miami from 54 countries. Super Bowl weekend, and I was able to basically, be in front of 35,000 people for 3 days at my event. Now, I didn't know when I was 25 years old that the thing that I hated would be what would get me the ability to sell a stadium out on Super Bowl weekend. And you just don't know. I think, like today, I know that the things that I resist the most, it's like this alert goes off. When I resist it, I'm like, wow, I wonder what's on the other side of this door. And every time I've done that in my career, like Facebook, I remember hearing about Facebook the first time, and I'm like, that's stupid. And I remember it was like, okay, what's on the other side of that door? On the other side of this ignorance, this contempt prior to investigation.
I like that, contempt prior to investigation.
Yeah, which is ignorance, right? It's like, okay, I don't like that music. I remember the first time I heard Eminem, I'm like, oh, that's terrible. And then I said, what don't I understand? I didn't understand the lyrics. The lyrics were genius.
Right.
And I didn't understand what he was talking about. So I just said no. And I think a lot of people do. When we don't understand something, we just immediately associate, I don't understand. I don't like it.
Yeah. Way more time in judgment than in action. Way more time in judgment than in being inquisitive and curious.
Yeah.
Well, and that's part of that whole ego breakdown of just being like, hey, we don't have to know everything the moment it happens. We don't have to.
Yeah, be curious. Be curious. Like today, when I hear a lot of people talking negative about something, I'm very interested in.
Yeah, it's getting attention. So what's the attention about?
Right.
Like if I told you something like, dude, you're from Mars, you freak, like there's no reaction, right? Because it's not close enough to home. But if we have a reaction to something and become defensive, that's something to look at and be like, whoa, why am I defensive about that? Why am I getting riled up? What's the trigger there?
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Check out my full interview with Grant Cardone by clicking here. We talk about things like, does he ever celebrate his victories? We always see him hustling. What happens after the hustle? What are some of the things that shaped him from the time he was a kid? And ultimately, what is the view and meaning of success? I'll see you there.